Hello, everybody. I'm Zenith, and welcome back to the Disney Debate, where we talk about classic and modern Disney movies. And today we have a quote-unquote classic to talk about today. But before we dive into this mess of a film, how's it going, Kat?
Why did you make me watch this multiple times?
I am so sorry. I did not mean to.
This movie may be called Absentminded, but I'm not.
We'll get into the details in a minute, but yeah, this movie has been haunting us for a while. Anyway, how's it going, Doug? Doug?
I'm sorry, were you talking to me? I was just busy trying to put Diamond Hagen saying, meet the Feebles on a loop. I wasn't sure if I should do it for like an hour or more. Should I include the stuff where, she's hitting you over the head with the DVD cover? I mean...
Doug, we're gonna have to stop you right there. I think the movie affected your brain a little bit. I think you've become a little bit too absent-minded.
But come on, this is comedy gold we're talking about. This has implications.
Doug, I'm afraid we're gonna have to fire you from the podcast if you don't get your act together.
I'll show you. I'll show you all.
You run me down with a car, I swear to God.
Anyway, today we're talking about a movie called The Absent-Minded Professor. Now, you probably have not heard of this one before, but you may have heard of the remake, Flubber. Yes, this is a original Disney classic that had a sequel and a remake, and after seeing this movie, I am incredibly surprised that it even got that much, because dear God, this movie, it is so weird, because there are certain points where it does have a little bit of the Shaggy Dog charm in small chunks, in small bits, but it's not one of those films that I really want to ever see again. Unfortunately, because we have been delaying this a little bit between my health issues and, we were supposed to record yesterday, but then something medical came up again. So,
this movie does not want to be reviewed, hence why all this bullshit's been happening for the last month or so.
Yeah, just this movie, we have had to sit down and watch it multiple times, and it. Let me put it to you this way. This is not the worst movie we've talked about on the debate. This is definitely not the worst movie we've seen, but it is one of the more annoying ones, and it also has a lot of boring bits, and unfortunately that means it's not really worth your time. But anyway, Kat, why don't you give us a brief summary of what's going on in this film?
I forgot. Nah, I'm kidding. How could I forget? So, yeah, the Absent-Minded Professor is about an absent-minded professor. It's about Professor Brainerd, who is a chemistry teacher at a local college, and he is obsessed with making this new type of energy. So obsessed, in fact, that he actually misses his wedding to his fiancée for the third time in a row. Oh, but that's okay, because he actually does develop a new kind of energy, a sort of kinetic sort of energy in which every time it strikes something, it gains more energy. He calls it flying rubber, or flubber. And of course, he believes it has wonderful properties and stuff. It could make things bounce, and it can apparently make a car fly, and it has all these other possible potentials. But of course, he keeps getting impended by everybody who either don't believe him or don't want to hear what he says, or in this one case, the one person who does believe him is a greedy businessman who's trying to tear down the college. And yeah, all sorts of wacky shenanigans ensues, and dear God, I did not give a shit about this movie. I'm so sorry. God. it's just one series of events to another, and it's like, it's hard to just follow because I don't care about the character, and I don't want to see him succeed, and I just, God.
This is a movie that I feel did not have enough of a premise or enough substance for a full movie. This really feels padded. This entire movie, like half the time, I would be looking at my watch because they extend these scenes far beyond what they should be in these wacky scenarios because there really isn't a main plot. And we've seen this a lot in classic Disney films, but the problem here is that the characters are not likable. None of them are.
Except maybe Keenan Wynn, but then again, he even when he's playing an asshole, he's still fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you have Keenan Wynn as a villain, and he is enjoyable in that role. He's delightfully evil. But first of all, I don't care about the professor. First of all, how do you miss your wedding for a second time, let alone a third time? If I did that to my girlfriend, you know what she would do? She would leave me. Because that's just rude.
Well, she's being generous. I would have stuck your head on a pike. Yeah, like, I might be able to forgive him the first time that happened, but the second time, no. And not especially a third time.
And the fact that she continues, like, to care for him afterwards, like, she doesn't immediately leave him. She's upset with him, but she doesn't immediately leave him, and then, like, the whole point of her character is she going to fall for this other guy who's also a villain, who's kind of he's basically a douche, and he's just like, well, I'm actually there for you, like, I should be with you, and she hasn't even broken up with the person she was going to marry. It's like that everyone in this film is just an asshole, and I don't care for any of these characters outside of, like, Keenan Wynn.
I definitely think a lot of them are assholes, but, like, yeah, Keenan Wynn's character and Tommy Kirk's character are probably the only ones I really like at all. Because, yeah, like you said, Keenan Wynn's definitely a lot of fun, and you can't help but like Tommy Kirk's character a little bit, because it's like, he is actively, like, trying to get out from the shadow of his dad, but, like, he's having a hard time, you know, he's having a conflict of interest there, especially because, like, the professor, for whatever reason, I don't understand why he fails to grasp, you know, that you are supposed to be a little less strict on the athletes in terms of, like, grading. I don't know, but yeah, it's a lot of this movie, it takes huge leaps in logic, pun intended. It's just, it's frustrating.
Yeah, like, the film makes these characters out to be quirky and wacky, but it forgets to make them likable, and you just have these scenes of them interacting with each other, and I didn't know who to root for, and nothing really happens. There's an entire third of the film dedicated to a basketball game that the professor helps them win with Flubber. And nobody seems to notice that these athletes are suddenly jumping 10 feet higher than they used to, and somehow they say it's legal. It's like, this is the kind of stuff that they made fun of in Air Bud. Like, a dog can't play on a dog can... There's no rule that says a dog can't play in a basketball game. Well, this is played straight, and it's just like, well, there's no rule that they can't jump that high. I'm like, what? Where? Oh, God, and this scene goes on forever. They keep cutting. I think this is where most of the budget went, because they keep cutting in between the stands and people cheering and them dunking the basketball, and, oh, God.
It goes on forever, and it's like, my suspension of disbelief is already shattered, and I'm just getting angrier by the minute.
Yeah, I think this is one of those movies where it's obvious that the effects were the star here. Like, it kind of reminds me of Twister in a way, in that when you think about it, it's really kind of a stupid, boring movie. But, tornadoes, look at that, look how realistic they look. It's like this, it's like, oh, look at Flubber, we can look at it bounce all over the place, and look at these guys, like, jumping 10 feet high, even though we can clearly see the strings on them. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm sure this was really impressive for the time period, because, I mean, it obviously was, because this film was actually nominated at the Academy Awards for the effects. It was nominated for special effects, cinematography, and art direction, which, like I said, for the time period, kind of makes sense. Like, I'm sure this was pretty innovative. But when you look at it by today's standards, with HD quality and stuff, like, you watch that scene and, like, you can see the strings on the guys. You can tell that they sped up the footage to make it look like they're bouncing really fast. And and like you said, it goes on forever. And it's just, like, after a while, you just get bored with it. And plus, the scenes where, like, he's bouncing the flubber or he's in the car and stuff, you could totally see the green screen. Or at least, you could obviously tell that there's a green screen. Like, granted, it's not... Some of the shots are decent, like where he initially is flying and he, like, flies up in the air and stuff. Like, those effects are pretty cool, but even so, it's, by today's standards, it's nothing special.
It is also infuriatingly inconsistent with how Flubber works, because he says that Flubber is constantly gaining kinetic energy, which should mean that, when these players are, walking on their shoes and bouncing, that they should constantly and consistently go higher. But they don't. Until later on in the film, where they use it on Keenan Wynn, and they say he keeps gaining, like, so much height every so often. And it's just, like, it's so inconsistent with how the Flubber works, especially because if it was gaining kinetic energy like that when they stepped on their feet, on their shoes, they should have first known that there was something up with their shoes, and B, they should have not been able to walk properly. It doesn't make sense.
No, it's like, especially given the tactic that they use to trick Keenan Wynn's character, and it's like, all these players, they were able to control it. They were able to, stop bouncing when they needed to, and somehow Keenan Wynn can't stop?
Unless they put, like, an extra dose of Flubber on his shoes or something.
Maybe, but then, like, they show in a later scene when the professor puts it on, how wacky, his like, he tries to set his foot down and it bounces. Like, it is so widely inconsistent, and somehow this thing makes a car fly. I'm like, I'd be like, if I were a kid, like, I wouldn't even have noticed a lot of glaring inconsistencies or, leaps in logic. But with this movie, I would have been questioning a lot. I would have been questioning how the hell the coaches aren't bothering to do any sort of checking to see why these kids are bouncing so high. Plus, which I'm sure a few of them traveled in the game at some point, which is definitely against the rules. So it's like, what even? What even? I understand that this is a comedy. I understand that this is supposed to be funny. And to a certain extent, there are some gags that do work. Seeing Keenan Wynn bouncing up and down and having the fire department and, like, fishermen and other people come try to help, that was a fun scene.
That was.
Okay?
There were some fun scenes in it, definitely. But it's like, the characters are just mostly so unlikable or stupid that it doesn't help to balance out, the bad with the good. It's so one-sided, and it's especially like the main character, the professor, is just like, how can this guy's our hero apparently?
Yeah, and yet he totally disregards his fiance, like I said, forgetting their wedding. Then he, like, tries to make her understand, like, oh yeah, I missed our wedding again, but it's okay because I invented this thing, and that's all that matters, and I'm not going to give an apology in the slightest.
I'm like, I wouldn't even have given him the time of day after he missed the wedding the second time.
And then he has the nerve to be upset when she goes with another guy, to the point where he actually tries to murder him by driving on top of his car. Like,
Which admittedly is kind of funny.
that was funny, and just how, like, freaking like borderline sadistic it got, because he had this, like, murderous look on his face, like this psycho look. He's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna run that shit over you. And he's like, everyone thinks I'm this mild-mannered professor, but I'll show them. I'm like, oh god, this just turned into, like, a horrible, like, slasher film.
And the entire time, because the entire time I was having flashbacks to the Shaggy Dog, because he goes to the police afterwards and said, there's this thing chasing after me. Same police officer. And I'm just like, yeah, sure, buddy. And then I'm gonna be like on the radio, sir, we have a dog driving a car. Do you want us to take care of it? No, we have a flying car over here. We're gonna take care of that first.
I just lit a fire and I'm afraid I'm gonna do it again. Yeah, just let me write that down on my invisible typewriter.
But yeah, there's nothing likable about the professor, like, and it's not like he gets any better. Like, here's an example of how utterly unlikable he is. The points where he's actually making sense, where he uses sound logic, I can't get behind him even then. Like, one of the whole things that starts off the chain of events in the film is that he flunks Keenan Wynn's kid because, you know, he's your typical stupid jock who thinks he doesn't need to do schoolwork or keep a decent grade point average to play. Even though, you know, most teachers would look the other way, and that's clearly a thing in this universe. But, and of course his reasoning makes sense. He's like, oh, well, he turned in a 0 and he actually misspelled the name of the college and yada yada. So I offered to give him a makeup, but he refused. I'm like, okay, normally I could get behind that. But you are such an asshole. You are so full of yourself and everything. I can't get behind you. Not to mention, the guy's father is the only reason that the school is still even standing, given that he's a millionaire and all that. And you're gonna poke the hornet's nest. Really? Especially at this point where everybody hates you? Like, I can't. I just can't.
Especially when they need money for the college. Like, they needed more funding for the college.
He barges in while they're in the middle of that conversation with Keenan Wynn's character, and he's so preoccupied with trying to explain, you know, the whole Flubber thing, that it's like he can't see what the hell's going on in front of him, that something more important, more urgent is going on.
Also, can we point out how he's only absent-minded when it's convenient for the plot? Like, they show it consistently throughout the first, like, 15 minutes and everything, but then once the Flubber's invented, he strictly, like, you know, sticks to that and stuff. He remembers, like, every little property that it does and everything, and he's, like, convinced that once he explains it to his fiancée, she'll totally forgive him. You know, not getting that what he did was a really shitty thing.
He never once apologizes. She is the one who apologizes to him when she finds out that Flubber is real and that it's not like this big thing that's a figment of his imagination, because they try to show off the flying car and it was switched out. And she apologizes to him even though he still has yet to apologize for everything.
And then what about his his neighbor who, like, goes to great lengths to try and help him actually remember to get to the freaking wedding, and he just completely blows her off.
And blows up.
And blows himself up in the process.
and here's what he should have done. If they were going to make him absent-minded and forget about, like, the wedding or whatever, he blew up. You know what you do? you call from the hospital and say, hey, honey, I blew up.
He doesn't even go to the hospital. It's like, oh, little explosion. That's okay, I'll just walk it off.
It's okay, I've had plenty of head injuries in my time. I'll just walk it off.
You know the sad thing is, his character is actually based on a real person. Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah, he's based on this chemistry professor called Hubert Elia. I'm probably mispronouncing that. He was a Princeton University professor who everybody called Dr. Boom because every time he did an experiment in class, they would explode. I don't know how insurance would cover that, but yeah.
So it's Hubert Farnsworth?
Pretty much.
Good news, everybody.
Everyone.
But it's like, I gotta wonder, like, was that part of the guy's quirk too? Did they incorporate that, or was that part made up? Because I'd really hate for that guy to see, like, that version of himself on the big screen and be like, oh, great, everyone thinks I'm a dick.
Oh, and also, can we talk about how he spends so much time trying to explain things rather than be practical and show them, and then it winds up like it basically turns everybody off when, you know, they technically really should be listening, but no, he's like going on and on instead of realizing that he could just show them Flubber's properties. He could, you know, look when the car gets switched, like the what you call it, Tommy Kirk and Edwin, they go and switch his car. Keenan Wynn, excuse me, yeah. Keenan Wynn and Tommy Kirk, they switch the Model T, and when he tries to start it up, first off, he says later that, oh, I should have known this wasn't mine because there was a radio in it. Mine didn't have a radio. And then it's like, when he tries to make it fly in front of everybody and it fails, it's like, wouldn't you maybe try checking under the hood or something in order to, prove that this is not the actual car?
Or better, you could just bounce in front of them with the flubber you have on your shoes, or even better than that, you can take the ball of flubber and bounce it for them. There are so many ways he could have saved the situation, but it's like, oh, the car doesn't work, I guess I give up now, because we need to have our low point in the movie.
It is so, and he didn't show up to anyone with the flying car while flying. Like, that would have been my first thing. Only until they actually start flying towards Washington do people start paying attention.
Yeah, and he actually tries to keep that shit a secret until he decides to call up Washington. It's like, hello, McFly, think.
Like, you are an inventor. You're a professor. You could patent this, you idiot. Just invite people over. Don't tell them what it is. Say, okay, I'm going to show you something great. Get in the car, fly the car. Here they have this whole complicated third act plot where Keenan Wynn wanted to steal the idea, but he's just like, all right, no, we're just going to fly the car to Washington since the Washington people didn't believe us. So they fly towards Washington and they have to dodge against missile attacks and like they try to get shot down because they don't have a radio in their car. No, wait. Yeah, he said his car didn't have a radio, yet they can somehow hear the radio broadcast of the Washington like jet scramble. Like, what?
Oh yeah, speaking of like things going on forever, that whole scene with Washington went on way too long. Like, it got to a point where me thinks that, a certain capital of the country was sort of partially sponsoring them. So, they had to plug it, per se.
I love the rivalry, though, between the Navy, the Army, and the Marines, or
Air Force.
That was actually pretty funny. Especially like when they all crowd into the radio tower and they're all like yelling at him landing coordinates.
Yeah.
And at the end of the movie, it's like it's gonna go to all three branches and they all glare at each other. So like there are moments of really good comedy in this film. I again, the stuff with Keenan Wynn bouncing, Keenan Wynn's pretty good. him and his son do a pretty good job. I think some of the minor gags work, and I definitely think that him like trying to run the car off the road with how dark it was kind of funny, and that end bit with the 3 army generals. But those are very few and far between, and that's it felt like this movie didn't have enough ideas to go on, and it's not something that I can classify as watch it just because of how ridiculous it is. It's not Shaggy Dog levels of, yeah, the Shaggy Dog had a lot of boring moments, but it had the climax that's worth it. Here, the moments of brilliance are kind of they're smothered in a fog of indecisiveness and just awful character writing.
And don't forget sexism. Can't forget that 60s happy sexism. It's there was a line in there that I had to freaking write it down because me thinking it over. So in the very beginning, when they go to the third marriage, the third wedding, the what's her name's boss is just like saying, "Oh, I'm getting tired of having a spinster for an assistant." I'm like, why does that matter? Why would her being married or not impact her career?
It was actually a thing because my parents were showing me a movie, I believe it's called Christmas in Connecticut, and that was a thing in that too. Apparently, married women were the thing that you needed to be in the workforce. I don't know. I don't understand it myself. Then again, these are different times, and as I can attest, things have changed.
But that doesn't make sense to me. Why would you want the woman to be married off, especially because, like, in those days, the in vogue thing was for the stay-at-home wife, the stay-at-home mother. So it's like if they get married, the chances rise exponentially for them to leave their job. So that would be kind of a detriment to you if that were to happen.
Well, I mean, this was the 60s, so that was kind of changing by that point. But even so, yeah, there is blatant sexism in it. I also don't like how, once again, this is one of those movies where a guy acting as a stalker is rewarded as opposed...
Oh, God, that was so creepy.
Yeah, because the guy, once he realizes that, his fiancée is pissed at him, and rightfully so, and she doesn't give a shit about his science shit, he... starts stalking her. She goes after, the guy she's hanging out with and stuff. He follows her to the game and shows up, uninvited at, a student, dance and stuff. And, it's like, dude, she said no. Go away. You do not deserve her. And
you had your chance.
And it's made worse that at one point in the movie, he finally does sort of get the hint, and he's like, yeah, she doesn't want to talk to me. I should just give up. His housekeeper is like, oh, you're going to have that attitude? If you want the woman you love, you go get her. No! You know how he is. You know what he's done to her. Why are you encouraging this? It just, oh, God.
At the same time, as bad as he is, the fiancé never officially breaks it off with him. And that's the most infuriating thing, because they leave it open so they can have the possibility of him returning when she should have broken up with him from the start. And she comforts him near the end after everything.
Honestly, she's not much better than he is in some regards, because, first of all, she invited, I don't know if he was a boyfriend or whatever, that guy she hangs out with. He was obviously,
the English professor?
Yeah, he was obviously a contender for her hand. He wanted to date her, but she chose the professor for whatever reason, and she invites him to their wedding. Who does that?
And then arrives to the wedding with him in the car, and the priest thinks that he's the husband, but nope, he's just there because he's the only person there for her.
And granted, is being a dick about all this. He's like telling her, oh yeah, he's not going to show up. This is all pointless. You need to get yourself a real man, yada yada. And it's like, I can't root for anybody here. Like, she's being stupid and he's being an asshole and just, dear God. And it's like, at one point, I kind of, after she went off with him, I'm like, okay, you know what? At least he wants to be with her. At least he wants to make time for her. But then he's like bad-mouthing her school and her and the school's team and everything. And then he's like being a pretentious asshole with quoting Shakespeare every other sentence. And then, it just, like I said, there's nobody to root for in this situation. Like, all people in this love triangle are just horrible.
And it doesn't help that the writing isn't very good. Like, the effect work in this film is probably the highlight, and some of the humor does hit, but a lot of this is just pointless talking. We mentioned how the professor just likes to ramble on and on about nothing for hours before he stopped, but a lot of these people do the same. Hell, even the other contender keeps rambling on about Shakespeare and other things and being a douche nozzle. Like, there is nothing enjoyable about what they are doing. Even when they're in a flying car on their way to Washington, D.C., it starts to get a bit boring because they start talking about, like, random, inane bullcrap.
It's like, oh, look, there's the Capitol, and there's the Washington Monument, and let's continue to have this pointless little flyover of the Capitol. Like, okay. Plot, please. I thought
there
we had a plot.
There is no plot. There's 3 parts to this film. There is the professor being an idiot and losing this girl. There is the basketball game and the stuff with Keen and Win. And there's the stuff with Washington, D.C., which is a fly-by tour. A lot of it is pointless. A lot of it is padded. A lot of it goes on and on and on. And it is as absent-minded as the professor. And dear God, I'm having an aneurysm.
I will say on the upside, this movie did manage to accomplish a couple of things. Actually, a couple of firsts as well. So this was the first movie to gain an official Disney sequel because apparently people liked it so much back then that it warranted a sequel in which we get all the returning cast. So buckle in for that one, guys.
Yeah, we got another one to talk about.
Yay. It was the first movie to actually be colorized on VHS, although the version we got was in black and white, so I assume, they changed it back for, posterity, because, back in the 80s, colorizing black and white was all the rage. It's also the
Ted
first...
Turner.
Yeah. Captain Planet.
Captain Planet.
And it's also the first time we heard music from the Sherman Brothers. They actually did the Medfield cheer during the basketball game. And
which, admittedly, is kind of forgettable.
Yeah, the Medfield, fight song, it's forgettable, but I mean, hey, it's the first time they appeared in Disney, and the Sherman Brothers are awesome, so you gotta give them props for starting somewhere.
Yeah.
And also, apparently, we get 3 generations of Win in this movie. I don't mean Win as
win.
I mean Win as in the actors. So, like I said, we have Keenan Wynn as the villain. His father, Edwin, who you all know, from Mary Poppins and Alice in Wonderland and all that, he shows up at one point as a fire chief while, watching his son bouncing up and down helplessly. I personally love the point where, he's, yelling up to him, and then Keenan Wynn calls him a fathead. I wonder if he ad-libbed that line. And also, apparently, Keenan Wynn's son, Ned, appears in this movie as well. He was one of the boys during the basketball game.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so like I said, we had 3 generations in here. And the 3 of them apparently show up again in the sequel. So, yay. Good point right there.
Let us hope that the sequel is better. Again,
hope so.
For me, the highlight is Keenan Wynn and the bouncing segment, because that just goes on, but it somehow it gets funnier the more it goes on with the ridiculous tactics. And get this, somehow they stop him from bouncing by tackling him but with the entire football team. How does that work?
That shouldn't work, considering, the professor tested out and said that weight doesn't make a difference with the flubber.
Because that's how it flies. But, as stupid as it is, I just got a kick out of it. I'm like, this is stupidly awesome.
Mm-hmm. Funny little note, one of the scenes where you see, Edwin talking to, somebody about, the guy bouncing, the guy he's talking to was an uncredited Mel Blanc. Yeah, I guess he just wandered up on set and just, wanted to watch this guy bounce around. And for a brief moment, the two companies were in harmony.
Which would not happen for another 2 decades.
Yep. Also, apparently, the Disney Special Effects Department actually published the recipe for Flubber in Time magazine. Would you care to hear the recipe?
Yes, let us waste some absent-minded time. Come on.
Let's see. To 1 pound of saltwater taffy, add 1 heaping tablespoon of polyethylene foam, 1 Cape crumbled yeast, mix it till smooth, allow to rise, then pour into saucepan over 1 cupcake rice with 1 cup of water. Add topping of molasses. Then boil till the lid lifts and says "Quap." I assume that's what the sound is, because I'm trying to read it, and that's what it says. It also has the label "Do not try this at home."
Well, okay. I mean, obviously we need
You're going to
plutonium.
provide us with the recipe, but you're not going to let us do it in practice.
Fafa, where do we keep the polyethylene triphosphate?
I am a method actor. I must make this.
I gotta say, though, that stuff looked really, disgusting, though. It really did look like melted rubber, which I guess is a testament to the effects crew, but it just looks so gross. Not to mention that, the sound for it, especially when it's in the engine, it's basically just taking a saw and, shaking it back and forth, wah, 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 wah. So
and
weird.
We have Frank on the musical saw.
I mean, if that's one thing I could probably give Flubber credit for, is at least making it look cool. And, making it look like something you'd want to play with.
It's basically Nickelodeon's GAC, only it can fly.
And it's sentient, apparently.
Oh, just wait until the remake.
Oh, yeah, we'll get to that.
All right, I think we are nearly exhausted of our absent-minded professor. So I'm just gonna say this. This movie is yet another one of those that I feel is a skip. Watch maybe a couple of the scenes on YouTube if you get the chance. It was worth the $3 I spent, so I don't think I need my money back, but it definitely is one of those that you need to go in with the mindset that it's not all going to be fun and games. There are definitely moments of brilliance. There are definitely points where I could see what they were doing with this, but it is all buried under a mire of just bad ideas, bad decisions, not enough concepts, not enough good characters, and just everyone's an asshole. So, yeah, I would suggest either just maybe watching 1 or 2 scenes, like the scenes that we mentioned, or if you do want to watch it and you're a big Disney fan, just go into it with that mindset that it's probably not going to be your favorite movie ever.
Understatement.
All right, Kat, what are your final thoughts?
Pretty much what you said, I just hate the fact that I had to watch this multiple times, and I mean, I say that about a lot of films we watch, but this one just felt really grueling. There are elements in it that make it good. There are elements I'm sure would have worked had it been in the hands of a capable writer, but oh god, it is just a mishmash of stuff. It's like the people making it themselves were absent-minded and kept skipping from parts to parts, and like I said, the characters are just freaking awful. That is one thing that turns me off a film immediately, when there's no compelling characters. It's like my opinion with was it Scott Pilgrim versus the World. It's like, the movie itself is amazing, the effects are amazing, I love the setup, I fucking hate the characters. And I know people out there will fight me on that, but that's how I feel, and that's how I feel about this movie. Like, I'm sure like I said, the effects for their time were pretty good. Today, they're, nothing special. Like I said, credit to this film for, what it did, but I don't know, I don't care for this. I don't ever want to watch it again, and I kind of am dreading the sequel. So, yeah.
And, Mr. Doug.
I think about 10 years ago I saw Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. 10 years later, I saw this, and I think I've come to the hypothesis that Disney's films involving flying cars are not good. Yeah, no, exactly as you said. I think this movie would work better if it weren't for the fact that the characters are just so unlikable. It's like you don't really have much to distract you from the huge leaps in logic, just the casual sexism, it's bad. It's bad for you. Don't ingest. Do not eat the flubber. For crying out loud, do not eat the flubber.
It's made of polyethylene foam. Don't do it.
Fire the professor. The secretary should not give him the time of day after missing the wedding the second time. Assholes are assholes are assholes. Keenan Wynn is awesome, even if he is an asshole in this.
How many assholes we got in this movie? Yo!
I knew it. I'm
surrounded by assholes.
Keep firing, assholes.
Keep firing, assholes.
And it's just like this movie's like a little over 90 minutes. It feels like so much more. You're better served by, spending your time doing something else. Maybe actually make Flubber, despite the fact that they warn you not to. It would probably be a better use of your time, and your head may not hurt as much.
Or you could listen to past episodes of the Disney Debate podcast. Now that we are past the 75 episode mark, go back and watch some of our older stuff.
Get it?
I might also recommend your crossover with Diamanda Hagen and the Isle of Rangoon, in which Diamanda Hagen hits you repeatedly over the head with a DVD cover, and then you get shocked.
Yes, our Meet the Feebles crossover is now out, and it is... I'm quite impressed with how it came out. Me, Diamanda Hagen, and Isle Rangoon, we sat together, and I was tortured and tased several times during the making of that crossover. And it was hilarious. Go check it out on Hagen's channel.
Hey, question for you. If you had to be forced to watch something, would you rather watch The Absentminded Professor again or Meet the Feebles again?
Meet the Feebles.
That's awful. That is awful. You are awful.
Hey, Meet the Feebles is unpleasant, but it has the sodomy song, so it kind of balances out.
Sodomy wins over Flubber. I never thought I'd say that sentence.
But yeah, please go check that out. This was a lot of time in the making. We had a lot of fun making it, and it is the debut of me with my longer hair, and so with that being said, I am Zenith, Warrior Princess.
I'm Kat. Dear God, I don't give a shit anymore, Macberrie.
I'm Flubber! I mean, Doug Macberrie.
Who are you?
Yeah, it seems we're forgetting something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, just remember, Doug, you're fired.
Oh.
That's okay. You can come back.
Yay.
Have a good one, guys.
Bye.
Hey, this is Megami33. Thank you for watching Zenith Will Review. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome videos. If you like what you see, check out the Patreon page at patreon.com/ZenithWillReview.